The Gobi Desert was where many merchants traveled to get through the Silk Road. The Gobi Desert was a very dry place. In the morning, the temperatures are very high and super cold in the night. As you can see, Mongolia was part of the Gobi Desert and was north to it. China was south to the Gobi Desert. The desert was also surrounded by mountains that people would go through instead of going through the desert because it was too dangerous. The Mongols lived around the edges of the desert. They named this desert the Gobi Desert because Gobi means waterless place. Nobody lived permanently in the Gobi Desert because it was and still is too dangerous to travel through because of the temperatures and there was barely enough food or water. The only people you would see in the Gobi Desert at that time would be merchants going through to the other side of the Silk Road. Despite the fact that there were no permanent livers in the Gobi Desert, there were and still are many animals who live there. Those animals include golden eagles, snow leopards, wolves, musk oxen, the Gobi bear, wild donkeys, and plate-tailed geckos. When the merchants and Mongols traveled through the Gobi Desert, they traveled in camel caravans because camels have thick eyelashes, their feet are wide, their humps store fat which provides energy, their coat is very thick, and camels also eat both grass and salty plants that grows in the desert. The Gobi Desert was an essential part of the Silk Road because to trade with the Mongolians on the Silk Road, you had to pass the Gobi Desert. Some parts of the desert are extremely mountainous and others are completely flat. The desert has no trees and not even a hundredth of it is fertile land. The Gobi Desert was surrounded by mountains that rise above 6,000 feet. Because there were so many mountains, it was hard to travel through. The Gobi Desert is also the fifth largest desert in the world. Throughout history, there have been several important points in time where the Gobi Desert was a factor in making history. One of the biggest points on the timeline would be when the Gobi Desert was sitting directly on the Silk Road. It was an extremely heavy use at the time. The Gobi Desert covers part of northern and northwestern China and of southern Mongolia. The Gobi Desert was a large desert stretching into the Silk Roads. The Gobi Desert was really hard to get through because of extreme temperatures, lack of water, and the sandstorms that occurred very often. Many travelers would travel through the mountains so they wouldn't risk dehydration. Travelers went through using camel caravans because they can carry more weight than pack animals. To get from Mongolia or China to many places along the Silk Road, traders had to cross the Gobi Desert, which was a challenge that many traders were willing to take on due to its shortcut around many mountainous regions.